To this session on blogs and wikis, and we'll talk about how they can be incorporated into Blackboard, but we'll also be looking at ways that they can be used independently. So as an overview, we're going to just define what wikis and blogs are, talk about how they could be used in a course, talk about how to create wikis and blogs, and then look at some of the assessment, promising practices, possible ways that you could increase student interaction in a course. And this workshop would be both for people who are looking to teach fully online, as well as for people who are just looking to add a blog or a wiki to a face-to-face course. So let's start with talking about what blogs and wikis are. In terms of a definition, Webster provides a definition for a blog that it's somewhat of an online personal journal. There's reflections, comments, and in this definition they talk about often there are hyperlinks provided by the writer that take you to other sites. In several definitions that I looked at, they say that a blog must contain hyperlinks. I don't really see that as being an absolute requirement of. It is possible that someone could require that when students post that they also include a hyperlink to some other external website. So just to quickly show an example. And we do have food today, so please help yourself to food and help yourself to more food when you're finished with the food you have. So here's an example of a blog. This is from retired Professor Larry Cuban, who frequently blogs about either school reform or technology issues, and so this is just a place for him to share his ideas on current topics in education. And so just so you can see a format of a blog, blogs are typically in reverse chronological order. So as something new is shared, as a new reflection is shared, it's shared at the top with some kind of a date stamp. This would be considered a post. And then as you move down his blog posts, he's writing short essays, but lots of blogs you'll see are just several paragraphs. But then you see another one. He's not blogging every day, but he's a consistent blogger. So if you either subscribe to his blog or just go to the URL frequently, you can count on pretty much every 2 or 3 days that he's going to have an idea about something else that he's sharing about. At the bottom of a blog, typically you'll see some way that it's categorized, and depending on the blogging tool, it may have categories. So in this case, he has a category called school reform policies, but many blogs just use a tagging feature. And in that way, people are deciding what the important terms are. And so in this case, he has a term, policy to practice, school reform. And so he's identifying those. Those work both for search engines. So his blog, those key terms, they help find his blog easier, as well as they help him if he decides later he wants to go back and look at everything that he's written about that deals with policy to practice. He can just click on that tag link, and if he's tagged something with that, we're seeing now everything that's been tagged with that link. Okay. You'll also notice at the bottom he has 3 comments. So while blogs are reflective in nature, there could be a requirement that you have for students that they also comment on other students' blogs. This wouldn't be in the same way that they would comment or interact in a discussion board. These are more or less, somebody's sharing a short essay, several paragraphs with an idea, and someone else is giving them feedback on the idea. So if I clicked on this 3 comments, we would see where people are leaving comments for him, and he may actually be commenting back in some cases. Okay, I didn't preview these, so they may have very little do, nor have I read that particular blog post, so I'm not saying how closely those tie into what he's written, or this isn't for any class he's teaching, so there wouldn't be any expectation there. But you as an instructor could tell your students that they should comment on someone else's blog post. And one of the ideas that was shared to me by another professor was they look to group students. And so students who are coming from similar disciplines or have similar interests, they have them be blogging buddies or blogging partners and work in small groups to where they give each other feedback on their blogs. And so that's something that you can regularly see if you look at the blogs that are posted. So that gives you an idea of what a blog is, and so to contrast that with a wiki. Wikis, according to Webster again, are a website that allow visitors to make changes, contributions, or corrections. And I would change, if I was going to write that definition, I wouldn't say visitors, I would say participants. I would say that you could, when you set up a wiki, you can make it so that only people that are subscribing to it, and you can decide whether they have viewing privileges or they have editing privileges. So it just doesn't, when you set up a wiki, you're just not allowing anyone to make changes to it. There's a community element there, and unless we're talking about Wikipedia, where they pretty much allow anyone to edit any article, there's some exceptions to that, but otherwise most wikis define some kind of community that have editing privileges. So when we're talking about a class of students, you may be dividing students up into teams. And so while a team, anyone on the team could edit the wiki, maybe you're allowing anyone else in the class to view the wiki. And that would obviously depend on what the project was, whether or not they're doing the same assignment or similar assignments. And if we were going to look at a good example of a wiki that's out on the internet, one that we'd look at would be Educational Origami, which does a great job of keeping people up to date on some of the things that are happening with education. It's more than just a technology blog, but a lot of the pedagogy that they talk about is related to technology implementation. But if you would go to this particular blog, you would find that they frequently update the content of the blog. The blog, instead of like a wiki where it's written in a post format where each new entry goes to the top, a wiki is a website. And so if we look over here in this particular case on the left, each of these links is a new web page. So if we want to look at Bloom's taxonomy and digital taxonomy in terms of evaluating, we would go to that page in the website and see the content that's on that web page. And someone who is a member of this community, someone who has been accepted as an editor, would have the ability to come to this page and make changes. Up at the top of this, you see that it says that it's protected. And so I would have to specifically request that on this particular wiki, you can choose to join it. And then joining, along with joining, depending on the wiki, would give you access to make edits if that's possible. You'll also notice if I go back to the home page on this, that there is also a discussion component. So what we saw in the wiki, or excuse me, what we saw in the blog was more of a commenting feature. On a wiki, there may be a discussion element or a commenting feature, and usually what that's in regards to is the content of the wiki. I mean, somebody, if we're talking about Wikipedia, somebody is arguing about why a certain topic should be included on the article for that page, or why one that's there should not be there. And so there's a discussion taking place around that particular page. So if we go to any page in this particular one, so if I go to the Bloom's Digital Taxonomy page, looks like there's 4 discussions taking place about this particular page. Okay, so again, the key difference between the blogs and the wikis is with the blog we're primarily looking at posts where somebody is writing a reflection and they're sharing those as separate pieces of content, like we're seeing here with Larry Cuban. A blog could have multiple editors as well, but you would have, each time someone would contribute, they would be adding a new post. And there would rarely be a case of where someone would come in, and if multiple people were working in the same blog, where they would come in and edit another person's post. They would just post maybe their ideas as a response in a new post to that particular blog. The question is, would I say the difference is between the way the two are organized? And yeah, that is that's a primary difference between the two. Is one is really organized as a series of separate reflections, where the other is organized as web pages where anyone can modify, anyone who's a member can modify any of the content. So we would see in a blog typically one person's voice in each post if there were multiple members of the blog, where in the wiki we might not be able to know whose voice it is because people are editing other people's work. So each is a separate page. And so we can, when we're looking at wikis and blogs, we can look at them. Both of those examples that I showed were external to Blackboard. You could use either of those tools. One was WordPress, the other was Wiki Spaces. I'll talk about those in a minute. But you could use those with your students. And so the decision you might be looking at would be whether or not you want the content to be open or not. Maybe you want it to be available to people outside of your course. You want your students to interact with people outside of just the classroom. Maybe there are professionals you want them to interact with. So in terms of the two, here's some more ways that possibly they are different. You could use a blog to help someone understand a concept, and so you could give them a prompt saying, what's clear and what's unclear about this particular concept in our course. And they could then each write a blog post where they reflect on what they believe is clear or unclear about that. There could be some kind of a personal reflection on a topic. So let's say that there's some kind of ethical issue presented, and they're defining how they would actually solve maybe a problem that was presented to them in a single post, each student in the class. So there could be a blog where each student shares a post separately. And with the blogging tool within Blackboard, you can choose to make posts private or public. And so you have this ability to let students share posts that everyone sees, or only you as the instructor see. And there's obviously examples of when you would do either of those, depending on the topic. you might actually have a project where there's a group reflection as a blog post. So maybe students have gotten together and you've told them, I want you to all write one reflection on the, summarizing your project. How did it work out? What worked well, what didn't work well when you worked on this project together. And it's a group reflection, okay? But you also may say, I want to know individually from each of you in a private blog, I want you to share what worked and what didn't work in this group project. And in that way, you may be finding out, okay, well, it looks like one of the people in this group wasn't a slacker. When I see everyone's individual reflections, everyone seems to remember that, or everybody seems to be reflecting that the project went well, except this person was always late, or this person never contributed. And so you can get a sense of what actually went on behind the scenes that you may not get in another way. And then you can just have them post a reaction. It's very easy to post a YouTube in a blog, and just put a video up and have them respond to the video. And in that way, you might have the post and everyone might be making comments about the post that's being made. Okay? When we switch to the Wiki side, we're primarily looking at a group project. Blogging can be an individual activity. Wiki can be an individual activity, but by the definition of a wiki, we're really looking at group work. And so maybe there is some kind of a project notebook that they're putting together. These students are working together. They're putting together a summary of everything that was done in the project. And so there's possibly process steps that they're including, but all of what we would call the deliverables. So maybe there was a paper involved, maybe there was a presentation that was involved, maybe they had to agree on a contract that they had with each other on how they were going to work together. And all of those things could be pages in the wiki, this website that's actually being shared. Okay. There's a possibility that you would have some kind of an online bibliography. Maybe everyone is working on the same type of project and you're sharing resources. So the assignment is the same for everyone in the class, but maybe you've decided, well, let's make sure we all have a common list of resources that we're working from to write our papers. And so the wiki, the whole function of the wiki is to have this shared space where as soon as somebody finds a bibliography, they, or excuse me, an article, they post the information for it into the bibliography that everyone else has access to. Okay? And in that way, it is a shared resource on a common project topic, which is another example listed here. And there might just be some kind of an introduction wiki. Maybe you give everyone in the class a page where they put their content. And so it's really more of a tool for social presence where everybody in the class can share, okay, this is who I am, here's a picture of me, here's what my interests are, here's examples of work that I'm doing in this class. That would be a single wiki that you could make where everyone in the class participates. Okay? So those are some general ideas. Do you have any examples yourselves of things that you've seen people do that you like? Examples of wikis or blogs used in classroom activities? The question is, could it be used with a study group? And I think it could be. I think one of the challenges that you find with students is they tend to focus on activities that end up impacting their grade. And so I think if you had a group of students maybe that were in a cohort model and they could see clear benefit from, okay, in our study group we're working on, let's say you have comp questions or questions at the end of the, that at the beginning of the course, these questions will be asked in an essay format in the final. That maybe, throughout the term, they work on those 5 questions together. I think it could work in that way. If it was more of, I'm just thinking about a question I had on the reading today, that might actually probably work better in a discussion, online discussion forum, where you're actually maybe, have an expectation that they participate in an online discussion and that they answer other students' questions in that format. And I can just give an example. When I first started experimenting with Wikis, I thought it would just be good if students, I didn't really have any clear plan in my syllabus because I had learned about the idea of Wikis after the course had already started, but I wanted them to see what they were and experience them, and so I just threw in an assignment that was, I think I might have given extra credit points, but I wanted us to create like a dictionary of key terms for the course, and it failed miserably because they didn't see how, how was it, there wasn't in this particular course, the assessments were all project or paper types of assessments. There were no final exams. So to have this dictionary of important terms, while it might have been useful, they spent their time focused on the things that were going to get assessed in the course. And so I had maybe 3 people write in it, and that quickly led me to believe that wasn't if I think it's important, I need to tie it to the assessment so that they see where the value is. How do I create a blog or a wiki? So we'll look at how to do this very specifically within Blackboard. Outside of Blackboard, what I'm going to do is just list the tools. And then if you want to experiment with these tools, I'm happy to help you do that. And I've used all the tools that I'm showing, but I won't specifically go through the steps on the external ones. So let's take a look. So outside of Blackboard, these are probably the tools that I would recommend if you're considering having your students create a blog. And I would suggest this anytime you have a program where students are going to start at one point and maybe a year or 2 years down the road finish their program. The use of a blogging tool for reflection, for just documenting the work that they've done is a really powerful tool. And to have a tool that then they have access to after the program is finished is an important consideration. And so if you have them use a blogging tool that's available to them that they actually set up on their own and control, then they can use it how they want when it comes time for the program or course to be finished. And our School of Education has what they call B portfolios, and those are done with WordPress. And so students at the beginning of their program set up a B portfolio, and then throughout their program they reflect on the standards, and I'll show you an example of that. And I'll come back to this slide and we'll talk about the wikis after I show you the blogging tools. Okay, so I've already shown you Larry Cuban's blog, and it's done with WordPress. So I can see just up in the URL, I recognize the template used, but just up in the URL it says wordpress.com. So that's obviously an indication there. This is my own blog. So I've kept a blog for a number of years, and it's evolved a bit. For a while I was primarily blogging about family activities, and I've moved most of that interaction to social networking like Facebook, and so I primarily use my blog for educational technology information. So before the class we were talking about snow day e-learning tools, and so here's my blog post where I outline some of my recommendations on snow day e-learning tools that someone might want to use. You can see, like Larry Cuban, I've categorized mine, and the way that I'm organizing mine is I'm using, there's ISTE, International Society for Technology and Education. They have what they call the NET standard, National Educational Technology Standards for teachers. And so these are the 5 standards. And what I'm doing is when I write a blog post, I'm categorizing my posts by whether or not they fit into one of these 5 standards. And so that's helping me as I'm reflecting to think about what I'm writing about in terms of what teachers need to know in terms of educational technology use. And so you can see I'm a fairly frequent blogger. I actually have an automated feed that I'm someone who uses Twitter quite a bit, and so I actually have my Twitter feed runs with this as well. But you can see as you scroll down that I just mix a series of either images, videos, and text as I talk about different tech topics that I'm interested in. Okay, so that's again something that's in WordPress. WordPress makes use of widgets. So over on the right-hand side, all of these things that you're seeing, so this picture, the search, the ability, if you wanted an email subscription to my blog, you could just type your email address in here and click sign me up, and then anytime I update my blog, you would just get an email message with what I've posted. Here, it allows me to put my tweets on there. So as I'm using Twitter, those just flow as a feed. Each one of those is updated, and most of the time I'm using Twitter for technology, but I've also started using a GPS location tool called Gowalla that lets me comment on places that I'm actually at while I'm there. But you can just see the different pieces here. An important piece to a blog is typically a tag cloud. So here you're seeing these are tags that I've used on post. So in this particular post that you see, it's uncategorized right now. I've not gone back in and tagged it. But if we look at the bottom of this one, here's the categories that I used. And at the bottom, I tagged it with the terms audio, audioboo, iTunes, MP3, podcast, and reflection. And so looking at my tag cloud, the words that appear bigger are words that are being reflected on more. So I'm tagging using these terms more often. So, you can quickly look at my tag cloud and see that I frequently reflect on Blackboard, e-portfolios, e-learning, e-portfolios, higher education. Hopefully that's something I reflect on. iTunes, K-12, WordPress is the blogging tool. So again, by using this, click on iTunes U. These are all reflections that I've made where I've included the term iTunes U. So if you were interested in iTunes U, or if I'm trying to think, what have I said over the years about iTunes U, I can go back and look at all my blog posts that I've made that relate to that topic. Okay? So I would encourage you, if you're interested in blogging used for student tools, that you might also consider using it professionally. It's really a good way to organize your work. Okay? So those are a couple examples. One more I was going to show you. This is just what I mentioned earlier about the School of Education. This is the student's B portfolio. And so in this, you're seeing the student actually write reflections. These are reflections that they were making in class, that they were talking about whatever class they were in. Over here, these are their standards that they're talking about. So each number you see beside this indicates how many times they've reflected on that particular standard. And you see the tag cloud down here for this student, so you see the things that seem to be important for them as issues based on the tags. And one thing in this particular one is they actually have what they call standards pages. And these aren't blog pages, these are like static web pages. But if I click on this standard L, what we're seeing here is a meta reflection. So at the top of it, we see how the state defines standard L, and then we see what the students have been asked to do is write basically an essay of their understanding of that standard. And so the way they're doing that is because they've been reflecting over their program on these various parts of the standards, they can click on any of these links, see all the reflections they've made, and then go back and write this essay based on their experiences in the program. So when they're finished, the thing that they're actually being assessed on isn't their blog per se, but they're being assessed on their understanding and the artifacts they've produced that show they're competent on their standards. And so you're seeing that here. You're seeing that because they've done these reflections during the program, they have artifacts, they have evidence to share as they're going through that. So you'll see places where you could click and view documents that they've created. It's really a powerful tool. So it both, during the program, it's very process oriented. It's what's happening to me now, how I understand things right now. And at the end, it's very product oriented in here are 4 essays that show I'm competent on these standards. Yeah, each student, you can watch, and if you go to my blog, there's videos that show how they set their portfolios up. I'll just show that real quickly. What we know right now is that the people that are hiring for schools, it's not something that they're asking for. So, but we have students in the past who have told us, what I did was before I went in for my interview, I made sure everyone had the address to my blog. And when I went for the interview, when I sat down, people were introducing me as the person with the electronic portfolio. So I knew they'd looked at it, and I got the job. So, they were feeling like it was an important part of the process. And we really encourage it for students who are looking for work overseas. I mean, a resume just doesn't give people enough information. But if you're wanting to go somewhere overseas or even out of state, wow, to look at all of that is really powerful to see the growth, like to see with a student what they were thinking 2 years ago, and now here's what the final products are very professional. So in mine, under this menu, there's a B portfolio for residency certification students. There's a link to, if you clicked on that, these are all the videos that they would watch. So clicking on any of these, they'd see how to create one. That gives you an idea of the blogging tool. Let's just quickly look at some examples of Wiki tool. So I'd already shown you this education origami site. That's done with a tool called Wikispaces. We see that up here, wikispaces.com. You can go to wikispaces.com and sign up for a free education account. And the one piece of that you need to be sure you understand is their free account at minimum, other people can see it, okay? So if you were thinking you were going to use this tool and only have your students see it and you see it, this Wikispace is, if you want a free account, is not the version. If your institution or you personally pay for Wikispaces, then it can be made private. You can have a private wiki. You can make a WordPress blog private. You don't have to let other people see it. And when I use the term private, I'm not suggesting that if, let's say, we were having counseling sessions, like our students were counseling interns, and we thought this would be a safe place to post notes because it's private. I'm saying that in a way that if you just in general aren't interested in what the world thinks about your projects, they're not going to have ready access to them. There's always possibilities that things get leaked out, which is what's happening right now with the WikiLeaks piece that's going on. So I think we live in an age where, you know, when things are digital, it's very hard for something to be totally private, and so you just have to know that going in. So, you know, design projects however you want to design them, but I would never encourage someone to think of putting something in a digital space that really no one should ever see that. I only think the instructor should see that, or, you know, the people in this course, even though you can have privacy settings. So with the Wiki, Wikispace isn't an option. There's also a tool, this is called Google Sites. And Google Sites is an option, and this is a project from some students that I had that were just asked to find a topic and tell me what the current research said about it, tell me what they thought was good about the technology, tell me what they thought was possibly bad about the technology, share a bibliography of where they got their resources, let me know who they were, and what their expertise was on the topic. So this is the result of that activity. This was made public, so you could go to this space, sites.google.com/site, and put in that particular URL, and you could view this content. With this particular project, one of the things that I told students was, since we were making it public, they needed to decide how they were going to handle the responsibility of it being public. And so here, when you see contact information, they made this statement: you're welcome to view and read this. They don't claim to be experts. This was a student project. They're not claiming to be experts. And they aren't open to consulting. So they're not looking for people to, you know, contact them and, you know, can you recommend the best whiteboard technology to me? Because they did this as a project. So, you know, in terms of how they identified themselves, they just made this general statement, which I was fine with. But I wanted them, you know, other groups in this class decided, hey, we really do know something. This is something we know about. And if other teachers want to contact us and ask us questions, here's our contact information. Somebody can send us an email at this Google address we set up, and, you know, one of us will watch the address and respond if somebody contacts us. So that's a kind of a real world project that you could have students do, where they could actually provide, you know, in this case, you know, they provided some key information. I mean, they summarized some of the research that was out there, and then they provided their own ideas of what they thought, why they thought this technology was good, and why they thought this technology might have some issues. You know, so having that kind of information, even if a teacher looks at this and knows these aren't experts, can spur ideas for them, and that's kind of what one of the goals of making it public was. Okay, so those are some examples. I've got one more. Here's another Wikispaces. This is a real world project that I worked on, which was the state legislature had a bill that they passed on e-learning in the workplace, and they then asked for a group to be formed that actually provided resources for them. And so this e-learning work group that I was a part of, we were supposed to identify key issues in e-learning and provide that information to these senators. And so this is, again, a Wiki Spaces one. And this particular one, it was protected. Okay, so there was initially a time when this was locked down, no one could access it. It's now out there to where people can look at it, but no one can add to it. But the site is there, and there's different resources here, and so it's basically, the one that I worked on was the Open Educational Resources page, and so we just went through and defined some of the issues and explained some of the things that were going on in the area of open education. And each of the groups did that. We could all see each other's work. We could edit each other's work. And so it worked really well as a collaborative project tool. Okay, and that's, again, a Wiki environment. I think you should think collaboration, blog tool. I think primarily an individual when you're looking at that as a project. Okay, back to our assignment. What we're interested in then is within Blackboards, sharing with you how you can use tools specifically. And so I'm going to show you how to set up a blog and how to set up a wiki in Blackboard. And so these are cases where you want your students to use a blogging tool or a wiki tool, but you aren't interested in this idea of it being out in a public space. Okay? So with the blog tool, you have on your sheet these same directions, and I'm just going to walk through you with them. If you wanted to be in a course and setting this up, fine. I think that you can probably see what I'm doing here and see how it works. I've made you actually students in my class, so you can actually participate. If you go into Blackboard, you can participate in these blogs and wikis that I show you. So I'm going to Blackboard now. And I'm going to go, the class is called Blackboard Blogs and Wikis. So you should see yourself enrolled in that class. And I've made it so that there's an announcement there just welcoming you and explaining some of the resources. And then while you're in there, if you go to the content page, you'll begin to see some of the content. So I'm going to first just show you how these would work from the student view. So you should, while you're in this course, I've created two wikis here, or excuse me, two blogs. You see this little icon. The tool that we're using is from Learning Objects, which works within Blackboard. But this is the Learning Objects blog icon, and then this is the wiki icon. So I have two blogs and a wiki. And so for the very first one, I'm asking you the question, why did you decide to attend this workshop today? Create a new post and share at least one reason why you came. And I'm telling you that all participants in the class can see what you post. So if you go ahead and click View on that one, and it'll take a little while. Yours might not have come up quite as quick. It might be still. Once you're at this particular point then, as a student, are you seeing across the top, subscribe, export, settings? Are you seeing all that? Okay, so the four things you're seeing on your menu are print, help, subscribe, and export. And so the instructor only is able to change the settings, permission, add widgets, assessments, and everything. We won't talk about all of these things, but just so you know, your view is different than what the students see. And so what I'd like you to do is click on this Add New Entry, and the title of it pops up right away and lists the date as the title. I would encourage you to tell your students to give a descriptive heading for their blog post. and think of it in terms of a newspaper article, something that's going to invite people to read your post. If you can help them think through that, that will be good. So let's all just write a blog post now. Okay, so you should see, as you're writing, you should see a tool set that you could use where you could actually import content from Word. You could add a video clip if you wanted to, if you had a YouTube video. You can add an image to it. I mean, there's a number of things you can do to experiment, to play around with it. Once you've written your post, and you'd want to have a rubric, something that would help guide them of what a good blog post is, which we'll talk about in a second here. And then when you're finished, if they're finished writing this post, they can save and exit. If they just want to save and keep working on it, they can click save. They can come back and edit it later, even if they save and exit. Okay. And make sure you save and exit when you've finished yours. And I'm just going to refresh this. I don't think there's a refresh on the page. So I'm just going to go back to this content area and click on view again. Typically we're not looking at all blogging in the same class at the same time. So when I would come to this, I would just see the newest post. This is the latest post that has been put in. So Erla put this one in, and she's explaining why she had come to this. So she's looking at some different ideas for group work. We see my post next, where I really came for the food, and Bianca came to get some information to know what she should do in terms of things like why to use a wiki. Okay, and so for each of these, we could have also built in a requirement that had students comment on them. So we've got these posts, and there may have been something that said, okay, now I want you to comment on another student's post. Or as the instructor, you may just be giving each person a little bit of feedback. Now remember, everyone can see this right now. So when you click view comments and add a comment, this isn't the place to put the grade. This might be a place to ask them more questions. Okay, so once you're finished adding a comment, you can post. And again, if I refresh this, coming into this, maybe the next day I come in to look at what's happening in the blog, I can see the most recent entries, and I can see that there's a comment here that I could look at. Okay, now there could be some changes that we make, so let's just look at those. The subscribing, what that allows you to do is to get updates on this. It lets you check a box and get email notifications. I'm not recommending that, and the reason is it tells you you'll receive emails at most 1 per hour. I don't think that sounds very good. If it was 1 per day, I think that would be a good use. Now, I'd recommend that they consider adding that option, and then the subscribe feature might be more useful. But I think 1 per hour, it could get heated or something, or you could just have a due date, and every hour you're getting another email for 15 hours straight or something. The export choice lets you send the finished blog. It lets you take it offline. So if you were wanting just to take the work that students did, pull it offline, you could do that in a format that then it could be either posted somewhere, or you could just have it on your computer as possibly evidence of for promotion, tenure considerations of work that you've done. Since Blackboard gets recycled every year and a quarter, you could actually keep this offline. Okay. The settings option is one we'll go through and do, but this is where you actually give the description, the title and the description. So we'll see, but this is the place where I could actually change that if I needed to update that information. Permissions one is a key one if you're thinking about not having a single blog for the whole class, but you're thinking about maybe having students blog in groups. Maybe there's clearly 4 groups of students in your course who could work together and read each other's blog posts and give each other feedback. That's a possible way to work this. And so I think it's a critical, we'll do it at this time to just show how this is set up, because I don't think, at least for me, this wasn't as intuitive as I needed it to be. Maybe it makes more sense to you when you look at this. But what you have viewers, authors, and owners of the blog. And by default, when you set up a new blog, you're telling it that the viewers are, and this is the name of this particular course, okay? So the viewers are everybody in the course. If I click on the authors are everyone in this course. So everyone can see it, everyone can create it, and the owners are whoever. This is kind of a grayed out thing. This isn't something that can be changed. But the owners are anyone who has an administrative role in this course. Okay? So anyone who's been an administrator in this course can have the overall ability to make setting changes for it. So if you had a student assistant working for you and they were in the course as a teaching assistant, they could actually make setting changes. But none of the students in the class could change membership options. So let's say we have a situation where we want everyone to see it because maybe we've decided to have 3 blogs on 3 topics, and each student is assigned to a different topic. So we're going to have a topic on topic A, a blog on topic A, a blog on topic B, and a blog on topic C. And you've split students up, so students are, there's a group of students working on one blog, or on one of each of these blogs. But everyone can see all of the information, okay? And so in order to make that modification, you would come in and you would click on the Authors tab, and then you would click down here where it's showing me who the authors were. And this is what wasn't really clear to me, was that this is something that I can click on. So, this is what, well, I've already selected it, so it's staying selected right now. But I don't want everyone in the class to be able to edit this. So I'm going to remove that. So right now, no one is the author, and now I'm going to add authors. So I'm going to look in our course. I'm going to click on this link here. It's going to show all the possible people, and so I'm going to just have it go down to the actual people whose names are in the class. And there were other people listed in this course besides you, the people that took the workshop before. So let's just say I want to have Erla and Susan. So I'm going to click on Susan's name and add her. I'm going to click on Erla's name and add her. And so you saw both of their names pop up here as being the authors of this blog. So if I save the changes right now, this is Erla and Susan's blog, and everyone else in the class can see what they're doing, but can't change it. So to finish this off, I would click down here the Save button. That would save the work that I've done just right now. And then I could click the Finish button, and we would be back to the page. Now, there's one other option that's really valuable here that you might want to take advantage of, and that is it now allows, in this particular tool, that you could invite a person by email. So if you have a professional, if we're talking about foreign language, world languages, and you've got someone who's fluent in Spanish who could be participating in this conversation, it might help take your students to another level if you had that. One of the professors that I've worked with before at a conference, he was telling me that he, through the use of social networking tools like Twitter, he's been able to recruit about 100 mentors for class sizes of 20 students. And so he's got these professionals in his field, and he just says, hey, can you look at this work these students are doing and give them feedback? And people, as long as it's not, you're not asking them to do all the grading, but maybe on, I'm asking these students to create one blog post where they've demonstrated fluency in Spanish, and I'm asking one, a friend to say, who has expertise in the field, to critique it from an outside perspective. And so you can actually invite a person by email. So we'll click Save down here. And then once it's saved, we'll be able to click Finish. And that will take us back to where we could make other modifications. Okay? The permissions one is probably the big one that I'd address. There are the ability to have widgets in the same way we talked about widgets in WordPress. There are little tools that you can add to your blog, but I don't really see in many cases where those are particularly necessary for this work. So I think you have the basics for setting up a blog. At the current time, well, we want to actually walk you through the process from the beginning. That was how we edited an existing blog. But if we're going to walk you through the process from the beginning, you need to be in a content area. And do you know how you can identify whether in Blackboard whether you're in a content area or not? You see these, one of these content areas, but you have the ability to call now a content area anything you want. So it could be called, it could be called documents, it could be called content, it could be called assignments. But the way you can tell that it's actually a content area is you see these 5 menus here. Okay? If you see those, then you know you're in a content area and you can add a blog to that space or a wiki. And so once you're in this, it seems logical that it would be under this collaborate choice. But since this is a third-party tool within Blackboard, it's under the More setting. So if you go under More and you add Campus Pack Blog, okay, they call it Learning Objects Campus Pack is what the name of the product is. So click on that. And then you're going to be creating a new blog. So you'll click Submit. And then it will come back and allow you to put in the title and description. So I'm just going to call mine Student Reflections. And descriptions, I'm going to say students will reflect weekly on their learning. And then I have the option of having it create a gradebook entry for me. Now for me, the way I use blogs is I would have them be blogging every week. And so it would, if I did that, it would create a single gradebook entry for me. And that's not going to work for the way I want to do it. If you were thinking, okay, I'm going to have them blog, and at the end I'm going to give them 1 grade for all the blogging they did during the term, then to use the gradebook entry here would be fine. Or if there was just 1 blog that they're working in, they do it for a single assignment and it's over, then checking the gradebook entry would be fine as well. But if you're looking for them to blog over the term, and each time they blog it's a separate grade, then this won't cover that. You would use the gradebook and you would just manually enter columns in for the grading. So I'm leaving the rest of that blank and I'm clicking add. And this is where we started with that other one, whereas we started with a blog that had no entries. Now, the one other possibility on this is you're interested in a blog where students privately reflect. Okay? If you're thinking about that, I'm just going to quickly show you. If I go back to that content area and go back to more, currently the way this is being handled is they have what they call a journal. So if you want it to be where all the students are or multiple students are reflecting in the same blog, then you want to add a blog. If you're wanting each student to be privately reflecting, but you see them all in a single space, then you would add a journal. Okay, it works the exact same. You'll see the same settings. So I'm going to just say new here. And it'll look almost identical when we walk through the entire process. So I put in a setting, and I always use the word private as part of this. I'm just going to call mine private journal. And again, you can have the grade book if you want. If I click add there, it will take me to where I see now that this is for all students, but it's a private journal. And if I looked under the permissions for this one, we see that it only has authors and owners, so there aren't viewers. So if you set up a journal, you're making it private. We have one more place to go with this, and that's to show you how to create a wiki. And I've got an example of a wiki here, and if you go back to my course, there's one that's called Blogs and Wiki Workshop Wiki, which is a confusing name. But if you click on View for that, looks somewhat the same when you use it, but instead of adding a new entry, there's the ability to add a new page. And so you'd actually be building, pages in the wiki. And I think this is a good time to say that if you're going to use wikis in your course, you're definitely going to want to have some kind of training that you give to the students or provide to the students, because if you just leave it to them and they haven't used wikis before, they'll eventually get it, but there'll be some pain in the journey. They'll have some frustrations with it. So I would make sure that you do some training there. So with the wiki, right away, when we're in this, we've got the ability to add the new pages, and we can also then, once we're in it, we can edit the wiki, so that everyone who has rights to the wiki should be able to make changes to it. Okay. So the question is it better to use Blackboard for wikis and blogs, or should you use external tools? And I think the question that you can ask to help you answer that is there a reason why this wiki should be in a public space? Or is there a reason, so there's two questions, or is there a reason why this wiki should live on beyond the course? Okay, if at the end of the course I'm done with the wiki, the students are done with the wiki, and I have no need for them to interact with the world in general, anybody who's viewing it, then it can live inside a Blackboard. If you see, well, wow, it would be really helpful if these students had feedback from other people who found their wiki, or it'd be great if these students could keep working on this wiki project or have the ability to keep working on it after the course is over, then the public tool would be a better tool to use. When each time they create a new page, and if I add a new page, so let's say this is topic 1. We've been given 3 topics we're supposed to cover. So this is like the idea of the positive aspects of a certain technology was the topic. I click continue on that. I'm to that page. I then can start adding to it like it's a web page. So I'm add content on this web page. So I'm coming up with all the positive attributes of this technology. When I save and exit, that then becomes a page in the wiki. And this is where I'm talking about students can get into trouble because they don't always see, they don't always understand it. So you might have told them, okay, each of your teams is going to create a wiki. And you need to tell me what are the positive aspects of this topic, what are the negative aspects of this topic, and then I want a summary. Well, each student might think they're supposed to create their own page for each of those. And so on your list, you end up with 9 pages. Well, maybe that's indeed what you wanted, but probably not. And so you'd want to have this ability to either you can go into each team's wiki and set it up for them. So you set up the pages and they're already done, and then you just tell them what to write on. Or you can just say at the beginning of your project, 1 person, create 3 pages. I think you also need to consider how much cooperative or collaborative work you want students to do. Because it's really easy to, it's much less complex to have a project where you can divide and conquer. You take this part of the project, you take this part of the project, you take this part of the project. The group project is putting the 3 together and giving each other feedback. That's much different than maybe more of a collaborative piece where none of us can complete a page without input from the others. And that's a possibility. So that gives you a general idea. Do you have the basic idea for the wiki? And so then you have this ability to, in the blogs, you could consistently see what was going on by looking through the blog post. There is an assessment piece in the wiki where if we click on that, we can see statistics. So we can see that right now Erla and I have been editing things. And you need to know the assessment tool is there, but you also need to be very careful how you use it. Because right now it looks like you and I are doing all the work, but one of the other students in the class in our team meetings could have actually been the brains behind everything. You know, they could have given you a Word document that you just copied and pasted in here, and you look like you're the worker. So that's another piece of this that needs to be made clear to the students. In your assessment of this wiki project, wiki-based project, are you looking at these statistics, and are you expecting students to enter and edit each other's work, or are you okay with one student being the technology person and doing most of the work in the wiki? My preference would be that this is a space where we can actually see how students are collaborating. We can see how they're editing each other's work. So if we make it clear in our assessment that we'll be looking at things like this, and that we have expectations that everyone will be doing work together, then I think we end up with a better opportunity for this to work out for us in terms of it being a useful assessment tool. So does that give you kind of a background? I think this is, we're really looking to introduce you to the topics, and I'm happy to consult with you on more about individual ideas you have for projects. And so I want to take us back. And so we've done the blog and the wiki setup. And so I want to briefly talk to you about the assessing of student work. And I want to just show you some documents that I'll share with you by email that you might find useful. So in terms of blogging, this is something from Dr. Arthur Ellis's course, and this is how he has students blog in his course. He says each week you'll be expected to post a reflection on your learning in the course, and he's asking them to either make I learned statements, key idea identification, search for meaning, or clear and unclear windows statements. Those are the choices. And I can give you definitions of all of those. And he explains those. He's written a book on this, so that'd be a good book to have if you don't already have it on teaching, learning, and assessing together. But what he talks about then are that if you're going to write a good post, the post has insight, it has essence, it makes connections, it asks questions, and it contains some kind of documentation. So they're providing their resources as part of that. So I'll share this with you that you can use, and he's given me permission to let other people use this, and this is really a good way for you to build yours. I'm also then sharing my method, which these were, again, from this idea of having weekly B-portfolio reflections. So it doesn't really matter if these are in WordPress or in the blog within Blackboard, but I tell them, after the week's completed, they're to write a reflection for that week, and I explain where they can find out more about the reflection tool. And we're actually, this is an older version of it. We're not actually using this site anymore. But I asked them then in a final reflection for the course to write out like a meta reflection over all they've learned. And then here are the things that I'm interested in. I'm interested in that they post on time. So if I say it's due every Friday, I want to see it on Friday. I don't want them to post early because I want them to make sure they've seen everything everybody else has done. I don't want them to post late. You'll sometimes get a student who wants to give you all 10 at the end of the term. That doesn't help us at all. I don't see growth then. So I want them to, anything that they post where they're referring to an article that we've read, to use an APA citation, include that with it. Spelling and grammar are important. I want them to relate it to their instruction. How does what they're discussing impact their teaching? I want them to demonstrate that they understand it. Explain why you know what you know about this topic. They've organized their thoughts. They've included an artifact. I want them to include a picture, a video clip. It doesn't have to necessarily be their own work, but there's something else they're including besides the reflection for me. We talked about this earlier, a good heading. I want them to write a heading that will help others know what they're talking about, encourage them to want to interact with them. I want them to tag it. So I want them to use tags when they're writing their posts so that it organizes it for them, it helps them classify what they're doing, and it makes it searchable for them to come back to later. And then I also want them to interact with people. And so the idea of either interacting with a small group of students, or I also frequently use this idea of alphabetically, each week you need to give feedback to the next person ahead of you alphabetically. And so I choose like one person ahead of you, give them feedback. The next week, the second person ahead of you alphabetically, third person. And so you've given, over 10 weeks, you've given 10 people feedback on their posts that they've made. So that's an idea, and I'll make sure you get this. The third example is for a blogging or a wiki project. And what I've come up with for that is, and have had multiple people implement this, is a collaborative script. And so this is really walking them through a project where they work together. So I can give you this as an example. And so this first part is there's some kind of a real world project. So in this case, I've got teachers who are helping a new teacher learn what's most important when they first start teaching. This is one that I did with Art Ellis, collaborated with him on. So in a consultation session, I can help you figure out something if you were wanting to head down this road. And so in this case, I think what's some of the key aspects of it, there are these important questions that are being asked, and they relate directly to the text they're working with. And so as they're going through doing their readings and reflecting, then this group project is also part of that whole process. So it explains they're going to be put on teams, and I make sure the teams aren't set up until the second week of the course, because we might have somebody drop, and I don't want to have to reshuffle the teams. That's much less likely that someone will drop after the second week of or after the first week of the course is over. And then we start, the very first thing they do, we break the project down into phases. And so I make it be something that spans the entire term. And the first phase, the first project they do is a team charter. And so later on when you read this document, you'll see what I'm telling them. I'm actually using something from Paloff and Pratt, where they talk about how to build a team charter. So we're just talking about how you're going to identify yourself as a group. When will you meet? Are you meeting in person, or are you meeting only online? How quickly do you expect everybody to respond to messages that are being sent out? How will you handle a group member who's not participating? What is the goal of this project? What are the deliverables? What are the products that are being asked for? These are all pieces that they can work from. And then the remaining phases of the project are just products then. So in this particular one, they had to write 3 essays, 3 5-paragraph essays, and then give a presentation. So in the second phase, they wrote together they wrote a paper using an online collaborative tool to write that paper. And it talks about how they work individually, how they work as a group, In the third phase, they did the same thing on a different question. Fourth phase, they did the same thing on a third question. And then the fifth phase, they brought it all together in a presentation that they built. And it again explains how they work individually, how they work collaboratively. I like to include individual tasks that they have to show evidence of, as well as group tasks, so that they, many times in group projects, you hear students, if you could listen to them, they would be saying, okay, here's the student who says, here are my ideas, and the next student says, those are good, let's use your ideas. And the next week, they come together again, and the first student says, here are my ideas, what are yours? I like your ideas, let's go with your ideas. So we've got to get that, you know, this person who is a social loafer, we've got to get them out of their bad habits and get them to be a participant. So if they don't show individual evidence, you know, each week, then they're going to suffer the consequences for that. Okay, so that's just to give you some ideas. Again, I would expect you to come with some consulting if you're really wanting to look at a significant project in this realm. I've provided you some ideas for blogging at the end of this, some ideas from Ann Davis of Georgia State University. I'm going to let you take a look at those on your own. I think they're some very common sense things. I've also just given you some big picture ideas on how you could implement wikis, so some things that you could think about in terms of wiki projects. So I'd be happy to, you know, sit down and discuss how you would implement any of these things as part of a wiki. I'd like to just close then by just giving you some getting started tips. I think overall, you know, blogging or wikis, start by keeping it simple. Don't make the project overly complex. Although just by nature, the wiki project being a group project probably will be more complex. With the wiki, you know, keep the assessment expectations clear. If they don't know what they're supposed to blog about, it won't be very good, or they'll be very long. They'll just write papers for you as a blog post, and that shouldn't be what you want. And keep the deadlines fairly short. If it's blogging, they should just be doing it regularly. It should be a frequent activity. In terms of the wikis, it's a team project. If you're using a wiki for individual project, okay, there's reasons to do that, but I really think it's important to do that. You're going to have to come up with a way to find your teams. So whether you give students the ability to pick their own teams, or you randomly assign them, or you come up with some way where you can think of the best way to divide them, that's an important consideration. And I can't just give you, you know, random assignment works best, because it depends on the project, depends on the situation, the discipline, so I can help you with that if you have interest. I already mentioned the deadline. You know, make sure you don't set up the teams before the final drop date of the course, or at least the drop date that where they get money back. Or I think they don't lose money is at 1 week into it. And then it's probably going to be a complicated project, so don't expect them to complete a wiki in 1 week. Divide it up into phases and have them complete phases throughout the term, so that when they're finished, they've got a final product, but you haven't put students in situations where they have to blitz the whole project the final week of the term, which many of them will do if they're not given intermediate deadlines. Okay, that's what I have for you. We are happy to work with you if you've got questions. So we'll stop there.